I think for me is I also live with a lot of gratitude. I know how bad my life was, and I never want to be that way. I live my life with intention right now. I really do. I've had all that stuff that was out of my control. My daughter's illness, my husband's illness, my husband's passing. And now it's really I really feel like I'm embracing my time and I'm living with intention because I couldn't control all that, but I can control the trajectory of my life now and what I want it to look like. So like you, I wake up every morning, and this is not about spiritual, not spiritual, touchy feely. It's really about creating the life that you want. And, for me, I am, I've run hard my entire life, like you have too. We've run hard because we've had to. And now I'm at the point where I could, really reflect and think about, well, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my practice to look like? How do I want my clients to see me? How do I want to be on this podcast? How do I want to be with my children? And in order to do that, you really have to step back and get quiet a little bit. And I don't think that in our culture we are taught or encouraged to be quiet and to really reflect on, the choices that we make. And it's really important. And that's in my practice. That's what I do. I help my clients really create a new life and really talk about what it is that you want your life to look like. What are your goals? What are your objectives? How can I help you get there?
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Matt Rosenthal, and this is Digging In. So if you're new to the show, I dig into what it takes to be a success in business, life, and health. In today's episode, we're going to touch on a little bit of each, and it's going to be a really cool experience in the way that our guest tells the story of how all three of those come together for her. It's really, really inspiring. And that's the reason I do this show every week. I really want to inspire you. I want to motivate you, and I want to help you reach your potential. So again, thank you for joining. I appreciate that you tune in every week. If you like what you see, please subscribe and share this. Let's help as many people as we possibly can. So with that, I want to jump into the show, and I want to welcome Mara Bernstein. She's with us today. Really, really exciting person. I had a fantastic conversation with her about the show yesterday. And wow, does she have an inspiring and just an amazing story to tell? It is a story of hope. I'm not ready for you yet. Hold on.
Okay.
It's a story of hope. And that's what I want everybody to really listen into. Also, stay to the end because she's going to go into some very specific things around her specialty, which is she's a divorce attorney. And after she gets done telling her story, she's going to dive into some really important tips on things that you need to know if you're considering divorce. But you got to stay at least until halfway through when she gets to that. The focus of her practice is divorce, but it's child custody and relocation. It's equitable distribution. It's alimony, child support, prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. It's really, really important stuff. What I think is really cool, though, about her is that when it comes to child rights, she's a huge advocate. She'll tell you about that. And listen, she's been 30 years in the business. She's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm frankly grateful. And I think that we're lucky to have her on the show. So with that long intro, now you can say hello.
Hello.
All right, show's over.
Great to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here. I learned so much about you when we spoke yesterday, and I was surprised to learn as much as I did about the ups and downs that you've had in your life. And the story that you told me was, first of all, was extremely moving. And as moving and as sad as part of it is, that your overcoming and your growth and your expansion and evolution as a person, it's like mind-blowing what you've done. Would you care to get into that at all?
Sure.
Good.
It's really interesting because it's taken me so many years to share my story. It's very hard to be vulnerable. And I've realized as years go by that in order to really connect with people, you got to be a little vulnerable. And I do think that I do have a story to share because of what I do for a living. Really is helping people enter into different chapters of their lives. So my story, I'm not going to go into the entire story, but I've had a lot of loss in my life. and a lot of change and a lot of heartbreak, including I lost my child when she was 4 years old. I was pregnant. I just had given birth to another daughter. From there, we had another child. My husband got sick. We traveled back and forth to New York. I'm giving you really, really the short version of it. We traveled back and forth to New York for medical treatment. We lost all our money. We lost our house. My husband was given 90 days and he actually lived 10 years. My children went to 7 different schools in 2 different states. I was a divorce lawyer in New York City. Our life was amazing. My husband had a hedge fund. I worked for a very, very well-known divorce attorney in New York City doing divorce litigation. But because of all the things that I had to deal with, my daughter's illness, having another child, my husband's illness, lack of financial stability, I couldn't practice during all that time because I was taking care of my family. And then about 8 years ago, I needed to go back to work and I took the bar here in Florida. And I started practicing from nothing. Some person, divorce attorney, took a shot with me, and all I had was a little bit of faith, a lot of gumption and bravery. I took a deep breath and went forward, and here I am today. And I call myself probably the unluckiest lucky person, because I've had a lot of adversity to deal with, but I've had a lot of support and strength and faith in my life to get to where I am. And I guess that's going to be the second part, or maybe this part of this conversation, in terms of why I do what I do, because I've lived it. I've lived through very, very difficult times. And I know that there are always other chapters. And it's about what we do with our adversity, really.
It's tell me about, I mean, there's nothing that is by accident, right? You said words like faith, and what got you through? Like, and I think that's what always amazes me about those stories. Like, there's something inside that even in the worst of times, you're able to get through, you're able to see opportunity, you're able to see maybe the glass half full rather than half empty. Like, what is it about you that really like drives you through all that?
I realize what it is now. My husband passed away 2 years ago. And that was really the first time that I was really able to really go through it. I've had a lot of loss, but I really went through it and I went deep. And I realized, people always said to me, how did you get through that? And I would always say, well, did
Yeah.
I have a choice? But I did have a choice. We all have a choice. And I think for me, through everything that I go through, I always try and find meaning. I always find purpose. And, what is the meaning? Why is this happening? And how can I grow from this? And how can I use what I went through in a way that will make my life better and other people's lives better? And, when you go through things like this, you have a choice, right? We all have choices. And I know that there's less of life for me to waste. I was put here for a reason. I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm capable, I have beautiful people in my life, and I want to live my best life possible. So when I find meaning in the loss, I find a purpose for moving forward. So what was that meaning for me? When I lost my daughter, I started a foundation for her. She had a very rare disease called Rett syndrome. And that gave me meaning. It didn't mean that I didn't have pain and I didn't have grief, but it also gave me a reason to move forward. I always say raison d'être. I don't even speak French, but it's a reason for being. We all need a reason for being.
So true. It's so
We need
true.
a purpose to get up every day and for something to look forward to and something to strive to and something to give us energy.
So many people have a hard time like really connecting with that. The fact that getting up every day and going to work and living our life on this autopilot, like just, playing the same record over and over every day or the same program in your mind. Yeah, it's not so fulfilling. Like, and it's But especially when you have adversity and really difficult, situations thrown at you, it is difficult. And you and I had a conversation that we both had things in our lives that have gone on, and it's hard for a lot of people to find that meaning. Some people give up. Some people, and I don't mean on life, but they literally, but they'll give up and just accept what was handed to them, and they'll just kind of play that broken record. You didn't. You made things happen, and I think you mentioned that did you mention you were bankrupt? I think you did. If you didn't, I'm saying it. To come back from that and everything else, it's uncommon. It's really uncommon, and it is inspirational. And for anybody who does see this, if you take nothing else away from this entire conversation, there is always hope, right?
Always.
There's always a meaning behind everything that happens. You just have to really, get rid of the tunnel vision and be able to see in those blind spots. You got to be able to look beyond what's in front of you. It's as if you're looking at a black and white picture versus a color picture. It's the color picture. You see all these other things that you didn't see at first when you just saw the black and white picture. Or some people can look at the same color picture and see different colors. That's where everything happens. It happens beyond what's right in front of you.
Right.
And you really exemplify that. And that's it's so
As do you, from our conversation. We're definitely like-minded people.
We are.
True.
We are. The recovery for you, I mean, in terms of recovering from being in a bad spot and putting one foot in front of the other. You have a purpose. You knew you wanted to achieve X, Y, and Z, and you knew there were certain things you just had to do, but still there's something inside of you. And I want to hear what it is that even on the toughest days, knowing you have a purpose, sometimes you still don't want to get out of bed. Sometimes you still don't want to do it. You
Absolutely.
had such a tough situation. I don't know. I feel like, is it something to do with just being a tough girl from New York? I mean, you got some kind of
I am
right?
a Brooklyn girl. That doesn't mean I didn't F up. Doesn't mean that I didn't lay in bed or drink too much or, become aggressive with someone because I, had all these things going inside. I think for me is I also live with a lot of gratitude. I know how bad my life was, and I never want to be that way. I live my life with intention right now. I really do. I've had all that stuff that was out of my control. My daughter's illness, my husband's illness, my husband's passing. And now I really feel like I'm embracing my time and I'm living with intention because I couldn't control all that, but I can control the trajectory of my life now and what I want it to look like. So like you, I wake up every morning, and this is not about not spiritual, touchy feely. It's really about creating the life that you want. And, for me, I am, I've run hard my entire life, like you have too. We've run hard because we've had to. And now I'm at the point where I could, really reflect and think about, well, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my practice to look like? How do I want my clients to see me? How do I want to be on this podcast? How do I want to be with my children? And in order to do that, you really have to step back and get quiet a little bit. And I don't think that in our culture, we are taught or encouraged to be quiet and to really reflect on, the choices that we make. And it's really important. And that's in my practice. That's what I do. I help my clients really create a new life and really talk about what it is that you want your life to look like. What are your goals? What are your objectives? How can I help you get there?
And you do have a unique approach. I just want to add to what you were saying and go a little deeper with the quiet. That is where everything happens. And so many people don't understand that. And it's not like you said, it's like a woo-woo kind of touchy-feely thing, but there is a lot to be said for the finding the quiet and the peace in your own mind and processing things rather than holding on to them, letting them pass through. Process them, let them pass through you, like physically, like get them out of
rather than being reactive to everything, we have a tendency to react.
Right.
Even in my practice with adversaries, it's a tough what I do. I have kind of something, the 80-20 rule, 80% listen, 20% talk. Because it is, we're so reactive that we miss the point of a lot of things in life.
It's
So,
so true. Somebody
yeah,
once said to me, it's better to respond rather than to react, because a response requires a pause. It requires a second of mindfulness. And then you can gather your thoughts, know where you're coming from, and then respond, knowing that whatever you say, even the tonality in your voice and your body language is going to cause some emotion in the person that's listening to it, that you're speaking to. The whole thing is like, when you react, the reaction is nothing but emotions, and those emotions usually come from what? From fear, from worry.
exactly.
It's all emotional. That's what a reaction is.
All emotional.
So it's a brilliant, brilliant point you're making, and it's so valuable. All right, now that we know the perspective that you come from,
Yeah.
and when you told me off camera about how you approach your practice, I was like, when I was writing questions for the show, there were certain questions I didn't want to ask because, oh, if you're a divorce attorney, certain questions I ask could come across the wrong way. And when you said to me that you have an approach that, I don't know, maybe the word is holistic. I'm not sure what word you use, but
Mhm.
you care about the people that you are working with, and you'd rather have them see an outcome where they stay married than to get divorced. Is that what you told me?
So yeah, this was an interesting conversation that we had. Many times people come to my office for consults, and I always ask them, what have you tried? Have you tried to stay together? What brings you here? And oftentimes, I'll send people to marital counseling. There's something called discernment counseling. There are people I refer to because listen, I love the business. I love to make money. I love to get new clients. And at the same time, I realize that, it's a big deal to get divorced. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of resilience. It's very, very difficult to go through. And if you could avoid doing it, all the better. There's something called a postnuptial agreement. We could do a postnuptial agreement if there are issues within the marriage. But there are many people who come to see me and they stay together. I've done a couple of divorces where people have gotten back together. So, divorce is not the be all or end all answer. And to the extent that, I could do good, these people refer their friends who are actually getting divorced to me. It always comes back to you. It always does. If you act with integrity and honesty with people that you do business with, it always comes back to you. So yeah, I take that kind of approach with people. I do. I really ask them if they're really ready.
Yeah. And I don't know, I thought that was a great, it was just when you told me that, I thought it was fantastic, because you don't really hear many attorneys that deal with divorce say that. And I think what that does is it makes you really authentic. I think it points out something important, that you have the individual's best interest at heart. And if there is an opportunity for the outcome to be something that's maybe best for the family, by asking those questions and at least causing somebody to think a little more about it. I don't know. I just don't know that's
Yeah.
so common. Maybe it is, but I don't think it is. I think that most attorneys, well, I'm not going to go there. Your
Okay. Yeah.
approach,
Don't go there.
yeah, your approach is brilliant, and I think that it just speaks volumes about where you're coming from, and when you tie that to how you got to where you are, it makes a lot of sense. You're a person that's had a lot of opportunity to have a unique perspective, and so now you can pass along the lessons you've learned by making sure that before somebody makes this really life-changing decision that's going to impact their kids,
Yep.
themselves, and everything for the rest of their lives. Are you sure you want to do this? Have you gone
You got to
and
be
tried
all,
everything you can
when you're
try?
getting divorced, you got to be all in. You got to be all in. And, my job as a divorce lawyer is to sort of create the path. And, here I am saying, it's authentic, it's this, that. But when I go in, when I start a case, I go all in and I go hard. And you have to be on this journey with me. We need to be on the same page. So you need to make sure that this is really what you want.
100%. All right, now
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you serious questions. No more
Okay.
fooling around. All
Okay.
right.
I
Uh,
like it.
but actually, the first question I have is, you personally seeing this, so now we're talking about people that actually are getting divorced and you're in
Right.
it, and it's every day for you. It's day in, day out. You probably work nights and weekends.
Mhm.
That's like a negative experience. I know you're doing a job and you're unbiased and you're neutral. Well, and you're trying to represent your person and get them what they're supposed to get, right? But you must at times take on the energy of that negativity. Like it's almost like a therapist. How do you not let it impact you personally with all the negativity you're dealing with?
Sometimes I do. I'm human. Sometimes I just go off on people. My can I curse on this? Can I curse on
Like
this
anything
podcast?
you
Yeah.
want.
I have a cup on my desk. Do you see what that says?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
By
That's
the
what I
way, that's
use
not
every
cursing
day.
if you ask us to read a cup, so you're good.
Okay, what the fuck? That's one
Thank
of
you.
my lines almost every day because it's like people do things that are just like, are you fucking kidding me? But
Yeah.
it's everyone has their own style and their own way, and we just really have to forge forward. And my goal is, I work with a lot of people who maybe are higher asset, who would like to have a more discreet divorce. And what does that mean? When you go into that courtroom, you lose control of everything. You lose control of the ultimate outcome. You lose control. People don't realize that when you do litigious divorce, and I was a litigator for many years in New York City, and I do litigation here, but I try not to do it as much because I know that it's in no one's best interest.
Right.
Your personal information is in the public record. Okay, down the road, if your kids ever wanted to look at your divorce file, they could see the most disgusting things that their parents have said about each other. People in the business world could look at your finances. I mean, I can't imagine why someone would want that.
So that all
Um,
gets out there. I didn't know that. So that all gets out there for the public to see.
you could search a record. I have
No
done
kidding.
divorces for people where I've gone to different counties to get them divorced so that the record is hidden.
No kidding. So
Yeah.
tell me something. What are the most common reasons that people come to you and say they want to get divorced? Is it still the same as it was 20 years ago and 30 years ago and a year ago?
I actually have a philosophy. People always say to me, because I've been doing this for such a long time, and also I have a social work background. So I understand, where I'm not a social worker, I'm not anyone's therapist, but I kind of understand where people are coming from. And I think, yes, it's money. Yes, it's, people grow apart. Yes, it's lack of attraction, whatever it is. But I think the overall message or the overall reason is unrealized expectations. People have unrealized expectations or unrealistic expectations of their spouse. So, you marry someone who, is dishonest from the beginning, right? And you think, or cheap, or very connected with their mother and doesn't connect with you. And you think, you know what, we'll get married, we'll have kids, he'll be better, she'll be different, I'll move out of the city. You know what?
You
People
can't
are,
change people.
you can't change people. So you get what you get. So what I always ask people, I'm going to write a book about this. Is he different now? Is she different now? And you know what most people say? No, but I thought it would change.
So it's
It doesn't
disappointment.
change. It doesn't change. So the more you try and change someone, you're more disappointed, you're more resentful, and the person that you're trying to change is resentful because they're not being loved and appreciated for who they are. So that's
Wow.
really where it comes from. That's my perspective.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right on with that. Because we all know so many people, even outside of what you're seeing in your practice. Just when you listen to people talk about, what if they are divorced, they talk about what happened, and you could peel back the layers and
Yeah.
probably tie it back to that, or even people that I know, and I'm sure that that are just friends who are thinking about it. That really does like touch on every one of those conversations.
Yeah. And don't forget, I was
You
married
said.
for 24 years. My husband passed away 2 years ago, and we went through so many issues in our marriage. The illness of a child, the loss of a child, my husband's illness, losing money. So I relate to that on a personal level, and I think that, because of that, I'm equipped to talk to people about that, not talking about me, but coming from the knowledge. It's not about me, it's about my clients.
That really points to, well, first of all, is it still half of the people that get married get divorced? Is that
Yeah,
like
it's
50%?
the numbers are pretty much stable.
Yeah. So did that increase during or because of COVID?
COVID really changed
Did you
things
get
a
real
lot.
busy?
Yeah, I was very busy during COVID, but COVID was actually very good for me in a lot of ways because I'm really a proponent, like I said before, of alternatives to litigation. Okay. Whether it's mediation, I mediate people who have money, who have funds, who don't want lawyers involved. I'm the mediator. I bring in a financial forensic accountant or an investment advisor, and we problem solve. So during that period of time, people were being more creative because the courts were closed. So I did
Interesting.
per se mediations with people. I did collaborative divorces, which, is another area of divorce where people think you sit around the table holding hands. You don't. We're still divorce attorneys, but instead of, when you go to litigation, you're adversaries, you're fighting against each other, and you're going back in time, right? We had this conversation yesterday about when you go to therapy, how beneficial it is to talk about moving forward. Litigation goes back in time. Okay. We want to move forward. We want people to not spend their time and money going back in blame and moving forward in terms of how can we problem solve in the best interest of ourselves, saving our money, saving our time, saving our children from all the, difficulties and all the really trauma of divorce litigation.
Yeah, I mean that you bring up the children side of things, and I know that that's an important
Mhm.
part of this for you. Um, what is it like for the children? I mean, you see so many
I
situations. I
can't
mean,
even imagine. I can't even imagine. I mean, imagine being a child and, watching your watching your family disintegrate while your parents are constantly at odds and you're in the middle of that. I mean, what does that do to a kid? What does that do to, the trajectory of their life and how they look at relationships? So, we have a responsibility to our children to protect them. That's not protecting your children.
that's right.
So,
That's right.
and I can't blame people. Listen, I still do litigation when it's really, really, really contentious litigation. I'm of counsel to a firm, and I send it. I have an asshole. I have someone that I send my litigation to. He's
Right.
my guy
That's what
because
he does.
I know that I go as hard as I can to get these people to resolve it, and if they can't resolve it, then we go really hard into litigation because that's the only thing that we could do. But that should be someone's last resort.
You know something? The actually, I had a separate question I'm going to ask you in a second. Sticking with the topic of children for a second, how does it usually end up getting decided? What happens with the children? Does it typically a judge basically says this is what's going to happen?
That's the worst possible thing to happen. How does a judge who sits on a bench, who knows nothing about your family, the judge could be like some 65-year-old guy. He hasn't had kids
Of
for years
course.
and years. He's not a child specialist. He doesn't know the intricacies of your family or the special needs of your child. I mean, most cases do not go to trial. I would say 98% of
Interesting.
cases don't go to trial, but they could get to the point where they're in court for a very long time. My
Let's
goal
not go to
is
trial. Why do they go to trial?
because people are just so unreasonable. And they're working from their emotions, or, what, listen, there are cases where people are not being transparent. There definitely are. There are cases where there's abuse. There are cases where people are hiding money. Absolutely. But there are also a lot of cases where their lawyers are not talking to them and saying to them, you need to listen to me. It's not my journey, it's your journey, but I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen. A lot of lawyers out there, sort of like, tell their clients what they want to hear. And that's not our job. Our job is to counsel. And our job is to talk about what the effect, every action has a reaction, right?
That's
A
right.
reaction has a reaction.
That's right.
And, you go filing papers all over the place. What's going to happen? It starts snowballing the litigation, and people forget what their goals are. And people forget why they're in it. And then the lawyers' egos are involved, and it just becomes a shit show.
You
Yeah,
know what always struck me as odd is that when that happens, and I hear about it with people that I know people right now that are going through it,
sure.
and they're spending their own money like that. It's both of the, it's the couple, it's their money, I guess, right? It's coming out of somewhere, it's their money. Wouldn't it make more sense? I mean, I'm being just like logical and pragmatic. Wouldn't it make more sense, even if you don't get along, even if you can't stand each other, rather than to piss your money away? No offense, I'm paying a lot of legal fees.
Right.
Wouldn't it make more sense to just sit down and figure it out in a way that, and granted, you have to put the anger aside and you have to put the bitterness and all the other crap aside, but like, you're wasting your own money. Like, that could be going to you can be using to help support your kids to
It's not our culture. I think that if I was practicing in a different place, Boca, I'm not saying anything bad about Boca. People think they have to go hard. They have to, it's this machismo thing. And that if they do it another way, it's soft. It's not soft. We problem solve, we go hard, we work with experts, we work with forensic accountants, we work with financial advisors, we work with appraisers. This is a business transaction, and you need to compartmentalize the emotional from the kid aspect, from the financial aspect. And people really get that confused. They don't, I actually have on my website divorce options. And that's what my job is, to show people what the options are. It's not only litigation or not. There are things in between, and people need to get on the same page. And I think that divorce lawyers need to be educated, really. And the judges on the bench need to educate people. I think that, listen, I don't think that collaborative is the be all and end all. It's a tool. Okay. There are some certain litigation attorneys say collaborative is bullshit. This. Well, litigation is bullshit too. It depends on what people need, what people want, what their objectives are, how much money they have. Do the kids have special needs? Every case is so different. And the solutions in terms of resolution need to be customized to where people are coming from. Not every case is a litigation case. Not every case is a collaborative case.
Interesting. But every case could drag out for a very, very long time, be very costly and very painful.
Yes.
And, it's interesting, as I'm talking with you, there's somebody that I know who's going through something like this. And I know that there's anger involved. And I know that because of that, one party is taking it up a notch and getting more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And as I'm listening to you talk, it's like, wow, they could just sit down and have a conversation, accept what's happening, which, I mean, it's hard, but what's about to happen with them is like, it's going to go like, what do you call it? The nuclear, like level 5, I forget what they call it. It's about to explode, and it's avoidable. What I'm getting at is this: if two people have two lawyers that are of a similar mindset, those two lawyers can come together and resolve something before it, unless the lawyers want it to explode.
They set the tone. If you have a team that sets the tone, then the level goes down.
The level stays down.
Exactly. And, it's very interesting in my practice. I have very complex cases. They're not easy cases. They're complex in terms of kids and finances. I do not have a lot of post-judgment business, right? And what does that mean? After people get divorced, there's a lot of post-judgment issues. People are not happy with the parenting plan. The alimony is not right. The equitable distribution was skewed. I don't have that. You know why?
And you have to go back to court.
They go back to court. The reason I don't have a lot of that is because I provide, and the attorneys that I work with, high-level attorneys, provide their clients with the opportunity to participate in the process, rather having a judge impose a decision on them. Once someone imposes a decision, you lose control. Wouldn't you want to have control? It's
100%.
unbelievable. People need to be educated about this. And
You know,
thank you for giving me the platform. I'm on my soapbox.
this is
I'm
no, this is
happy about that.
fantastic. And I'm trying to be careful not to generalize attorneys because everybody does that, right?
Sure. Yes,
But it's hard to not point out how different your approach is, and everything you're saying is just so logical and it's very empathetic. And I want to share something with you. So I went through a business divorce, which I told you about. I had some business partners, and I can tell you that the lawyer that I have, who's still my attorney, was very like low key, just wanted to solve the problem. We just wanted to settle. We were not trying to argue. We wanted to just solve the problem and not, waste the money. Well, I ended up spending like $400,000 in legal
sure.
fees over the course of 2 years, not because of my attorney, because at every possible chance, the other party just wanted to be difficult.
Right.
They just wanted to be, and so they file one thing, they file an order to show cause with this thick. Well, I have to answer 150 things about me that aren't true. Right?
Exactly.
And it costs so much money when at the end of the day, the end result was the same. It just took 2 years to get there. The payout was the same.
It's inevitable. It's always going to happen. It's always going to happen.
It's so ridiculous. Anyway.
Human nature. It's always going to happen. Really is.
Yeah. You mentioned something before that I wanted to ask you about. And I mean, I don't know, kind of joking, but kind of not joking. People try to hide money in places. And I don't know this because I've never been in a situation to have to try and figure this out. But I hear people talk about buying gold. I'm putting it in a safe deposit box. I'm going to buy some Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, is that stuff really, I mean, people do it, but it's trackable, right? Like you can't hide your money.
So I would say in the vast majority of my cases, I work with forensic accountants, and, people starting a case that they say, oh, well, I have an accountant. I'm not talking about a guy who's a tax preparer. I'm talking about someone. Exactly. I'm talking about someone who's going to go in and trace. Right. We tell them where the hot spots are, and they trace. And I work very, very closely with these people. And it's also a matter of ascertaining income. Income is not income. People come in, oh, the tax return says, I don't care what the tax return says. Your husband, your wife is in his or her own business. We need to go in and we need to look at the P&L. We need to look at everything.
They own a pizza parlor. It's all cash.
Exactly.
So where's the money?
Exactly. Right. But so when I say that we're not going to court, doesn't mean that we're not doing our due diligence and we're not going hard. We're going hard. We're going hard.
Is it possible? I mean, do you find that people take these like, it's like evasive action? I'm going to go buy some gold, or I'm going to go buy some Bitcoin. They think that they can actually hide money. Like, do you see that regularly?
Yes. Yes.
And it's always discovered. Because there's a money trail.
Typically, yes.
I was always curious about that because I hear people that I know say, I'm putting gold away because I might be getting divorced. I'm like, yeah, but you're still using money.
So when the accountant goes in and the accountant sees that, $500,000 has been taken out of the brokerage account, well, where did it go? Where is it? There's, it's kind of like a map.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be traceable. Mm-hmm. How long does the process usually take from the time somebody comes in until they actually have what they want?
Depends on what we're talking about. Is it going to be reasonable? Or is it your friends whose, divorce is, ramping up? Yeah, it depends. It really depends. And very often people say that to me and I say, let me see who your spouse hires. And then I'll have a better idea.
That's right.
Can I work with this person? Can we resolve this? Or is this going to be like, oh no, not him again? Now,
what about do you find that the couple will come to you and say, trying to think about how to position this, that you can negotiate something for a couple without having to have two lawyers involved? Is that unheard of?
That's unethical. As a lawyer, I can't represent both parties, but as a mediator, right? Mm-hmm. I can mediate, which is, I can't give them legal advice, but I could facilitate conversations. And I could work with an accountant or a mental health professional or a special needs. Because I had a special needs child, I understand that world. So I work with people, a lot of people who have special needs kids, Asperger's, autism. I mean, it's rampant, unfortunately. And, to do a parenting plan with people who have special needs kids, it's very different. So I always bring in, let's say, a trust and estates attorney, because, very often, unfortunately, and very sadly, these kids are going to be adults and they're still going to be dependents. So what do we do about when, and you said, do I do holistic? It's comprehensive. So we think about what's going to happen in the future. How do we make provisions for your kids in the future? What kind of trust do we do for them? So it's, we take a very big picture approach to it and work with the team, actually.
The topic of the children, I think we kind of glazed over it. I had thought maybe that the judges tend to make decisions, but how does it really typically get decided? So we don't want a judge to make a decision, but right. I mean, I guess the two lawyers have to negotiate some sort of settlement of who gets children when. I mean,
right. So basically, I could give you an example of a case I'm working in now. There's something in every divorce case, there needs to be an executed parenting plan, right? So the parenting plan sets forth the time sharing, whether your kids are going to be with you 1 week, with your spouse another week, whether it's 2 days on, 2 days off, how vacations will be. Are you going to split it? How holidays will be split? What the decision making is going to be. Most often what happens in these cases is that it's resolved at mediation or after mediation. So even if you have attorneys, very often before the case is, we say it's going to go to trial, it never really goes to trial. You go to a mediation where one spouse is in the room with an attorney and maybe an accountant. The other spouse is in the room with his or her attorney, and the mediator goes back and forth. And the end goal is to enter into a marital settlement agreement and a parenting plan. And the important thing for people to realize is that it's always modifiable, parenting plans, because kids get older, right? You have a parenting plan. You have 2 kids, right? They're 10 and 13.
Correct.
Okay. Your daughter is going to be 16. Is she gonna want to be with daddy Monday, Tuesday, and going back and forth? She might be involved in.
Daddy wouldn't know what to do with it. It's a mommy thing.
We'll talk then. We'll talk then when she's 16. So yeah.
The process is it's just so complicated. It's interesting. It's complicated, but if 2 people are thinking about getting divorced or one person's thinking about it, what should they know before they actually pull the trigger and say, okay, I'm going to a lawyer and I'm going to go through with this? What should they be thinking about? What's that checklist?
What should they know, or what should they do?
What should they know? No. What should they know? Let's do both. What should they know before they file for divorce?
Before they file, I think they have to have a consultation with more than one attorney to get different perspectives, because we all practice differently. They should know that they're putting their lives in someone's hands. So they need to be very, very, very careful in terms of who they are hiring to represent them. Word of mouth is the best. Referrals are the best. In terms of what they should be doing and what they should know, it depends on where they're coming from. Is this person the supported spouse, right? Is this person who's asking for alimony, asking for child support? Or is this person the one who's providing, will be potentially providing? So I think it really depends on where you're coming from. It's important to get your financial house in order and make copies of tax returns and credit card statements, checking account statements. Very often in a marriage, we know there's always one person who is more on top of the
Sure.
finances. And I encourage people to have open conversations about that during the marriage. I mean, the conversation might really be, before you get married, what should we do? Marriage planning, and that's when I do prenuptial agreements. It's very important. That really comes into play. What is your marriage going to be like? How are you going to handle the finances?
That brings up, so I got two things out of that. Different
You're
perspective.
you're an amazing interviewer. You are.
Thank you.
You ask great questions.
Well, you just made me speechless. Thank you. So different perspectives would be one thing to know before you actually make the decision. And the second thing I think you said was different attorneys get different opinions, right? That was two. I don't want to feed you what I have in my mind, but give me like two more things that somebody should know before they get divorced, before they file for divorce. Let me ask you what's in my mind. So I don't want to put
Okay.
You hit on two good ones, but before they file, shouldn't they know that they're making the decision shouldn't they have gone through enough of a conversation with themselves that they know they're making this decision to file for divorce, to go through with it for the right reasons?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I encourage people, I started my practice in Boca with nothing. I mean, I practiced in New York City. I didn't have a client base. And what I did was I met with every therapist that I really, that I really resonated with, or I heard good things about. And I'm a really big proponent of people going to therapy, not because I think there's anything wrong with them. I always tell people, you should go to therapy, or I'm going to refer you to someone, because prior to divorce, that's answering your question. You really have to understand, why am I thinking of going down this road? What are my motivations? What do I hope to get out of this?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And also during divorce, people look at me as their therapist. I'm not your therapist. Okay. I'm not trained to be a therapist. You're paying me too much money to represent you legally for me to give you therapeutic advice. You're going to the wrong person. While you're going through divorce, you need to develop resilience, because it's tough going through divorce. And then the other thing is swinging back to meaning and purpose and finding meaning. I always encourage people that while they're going through the divorce, don't let it be for naught. There's so many things that you could learn. There's so many ways that you could build yourself up and enter into and go into this next chapter much better than when you started this chapter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're saying, and I think we're agreeing that, yes, if you were to consult with a therapist, like to take the time to not, like we said before, to not just react.
Not be hasty about it.
It could be years of a bad situation that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get divorced. So before filing for divorce, you got to make sure that this is the best path, because it may not be, and then you may go through with it only to find out after the fact, like you mentioned before, you end up marrying the same person again. To find yourself having gotten divorced and then being like, oh wow, you know what, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. The grass isn't always greener, and I actually didn't really put enough thought into it. I was just reacting emotionally to things, when what I could have done is I could have searched inside myself a little more. I could have gotten to know myself a little more and figure out what's really going on. And these are things you touched on earlier, just finding out like what makes you tick, knowing who you are, realizing that the person that you married, maybe you wanted them to be something that they weren't, but there's all the qualities that were there that you did like and love and admire. And so I think that's an important thing. It's not a tactical thing, it's an emotional thing to consider before filing for divorce, right? Because once you pull that lever and you filed, like you said before, the papers start flying around and you just started a machine. There's a machine that's in progress. Exactly. And now it's hard to stop that machine, I think, once it's rolling, right? I mean, you could, but
you could.
It's faster and faster, doesn't it?
And also it depends. It depends how you do it. If you're in litigation, things might be said, actions might be taken that are just so detrimental that you can't go back. But maybe if you did it collaboratively, or if you did it, in settlement conferences, maybe it opened the lines of communication. Maybe you saw each other in a different way.
Yeah.
So It's people, different people are attracted to different types of energy and different types of lawyers. I probably attract people who are more like-minded to me, right?
That's
Yeah,
natural, like
yeah,
100%. And conversely, somebody that wants somebody that has a different vibe, they're going to just be like, oh, I don't want to work with her. They're going to go somewhere else. Which, by the way, is exactly how business is operated, right? And so we all want our clients to be like-minded,
exactly.
and we want people that we can work with. So the flip side of the question is the angle you said before. Okay, so now somebody decides that they do want to get divorced. They've done all the soul searching. They know, okay, that I'm out. Like, I'm not staying.
Mhm.
What are the steps that they should take? And it may be repetitive. I think you've kind of touched on a lot of it, but if you list them, like bullet points, what would somebody do?
So the first thing to do is, there are different aspects of divorce. So there's a crazy acronym that we use in divorce, peace, the word peace. I mean, why would we use the word peace in divorce? But the P piece is the parenting piece, really. Thinking about, what do you want do your kids have special needs? What are their goals? What are their objectives? Where are they in their lives?
So children first.
The children first. Then it's the equitable distribution piece. I live in this house. Do I want to stay in this house? Do I want to sell the house? I think it's very, very, very important to get your financial house in order. And a very, very good thing is, in addition to going to consult with a lawyer, consulting with a financial professional, whether that's your accountant to really understand what your finances are, whether that's your investment advisor, whether that's a trusted friend who is, astute financially, to really understand where you are. And in doing that, you have to gather the documents. So I give people a list of documents that they should be gathering in order to help start the process, to understand how we're going to start and where we are.
And when you talk about so it's children first, finances, financial advisor, just really understand what's going on, and choosing a lawyer. Look, there are people that just Google, like, to find a lawyer, or they'll ask their friends, which I want to ask you a question about in a second. They'll ask their friends, well, who did you use, or who should, who do you know that had a good outcome, and let me call that person. I think choosing a lawyer, knowing what you want the outcome to be. If you really want to go to war, like you said before, then you got to find a lawyer that's going to go to war. If you really don't want to go to war and you want it to be a different experience, you got to feel like you have the right lawyer, right? So would you advise that you speak to a few different lawyers and make sure that you find somebody that feels just right?
Absolutely. It's such a intense personal relationship. You are bearing your heart, your soul, you're exposing your children, your finances to this particular person. And you have to really feel that this person has your back, right? That they're
100%.
responsive. They're not all about making the money and churning. They're about you and your family. That they are surrounded by astute professionals. Because you know what? We're not accountants. We're not child specialists. You need to surround yourself with a team. And that, they have the right experience. They have the right experience and they have the right expertise to do it.
I just started smiling as I thought of something as I'm thinking of what I want to ask you next. The you know where I live, and we're not going to say that on here, but
Yeah.
you know the area that I live in, and it's a hotbed for divorce.
Oh, yeah.
I oftentimes will be at a restaurant, a local restaurant, or out having some cocktails with somebody, or even where I live, there's a restaurant, and
Yeah.
there's groups of people that will be hanging out, and they're divorced or going through it, and you hear the conversations that they're having. So when you talk about having your priorities, like, for example, what's the list of things you would do? Well, your children first, your finances second, your lawyer next. When you mentioned friends, it occurred to me that could be a problem. If you have friends who are giving you advice who have had bad experiences and you listen to them, it counteracts what your lawyers are telling you. And it makes your job harder. And
Right. We call those people the interlopers. Everybody has an experience. Everyone is telling you what to do. And you know what? It's not relevant to your story. Everyone's divorce is completely different. Everyone's financial situation is different. Everyone's relationship is different. Everyone's children are different. So, take everything with a grain of salt. And then the biggest thing is, my husband said, my wife said, I don't give a shit what they said. I don't care what they said. You don't have to listen to whatever they say. Doesn't mean it's the gospel. So, facts are facts, numbers are numbers. And, you have to kind of steal yourself away from being sucked into that. And it's hard for people. It's really hard. And, sometimes I take a really hard line with people and, they love it.
Well,
Because
sometimes it's
people need
necessary.
direction. People
Yeah.
need direction. Yeah.
They need leadership. They don't know what to do. I mean, and they're living through this very traumatic,
Yes.
very emotional, difficult thing. And it's like they're in a way they're hiring you to hold them accountable.
Yes,
Right? Like somebody has to be the adult in the room, right?
exactly. Exactly.
Interesting. Can we totally shift for a second?
Sure.
When did you discover meditation?
I've always been involved like you, always, been reading self-discovery throughout the years. And I think it was about 4 years ago, my husband was really, really sick. Um, Actually, it was a little more than that. And it was during a very, very difficult time in my life. And a friend of mine is on the David Lynch Foundation. David Lynch is a big proponent of transcendental meditation, TM. And I took the course and it has been life-changing for me. Yeah.
Tell me so I meditate every morning, but I've never done what you're describing. So how is that different, that type of meditation?
Listen, it's, everyone meditation resonate. And when we talk about meditation, I also want people to understand it's not like, we're walking around right, exactly. It's a way of sort of setting yourself up for the day and your life. That's
Yes.
really what it is. People work out, people meditate. For me, it's a way of clearing the palate, right? And clearing my head and letting information, creativity, whatever it is, infiltrate my mind that might not be there because our minds are so busy, right? Do you feel the same way about meditation?
I don't want to interrupt you. There's a lot of things coming into my mind as you're talking.
Yeah.
When I meditate in the morning, I always meditate at 5 or 5:15. The sun has to still be down.
Wow.
It's totally quiet. And sometimes I listen to guided meditations, and it really depends on what I want to put in my mind for the day. This morning, I listened to one, which was a long one. It was a half hour, and it was called Loving Kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I had a really intense day, and just a lot of stuff going on. And I felt in a way that I didn't want to feel all day. I was a little like inside, I was like almost a little angry. I was short with people, and I don't want to feel that way. And I'm aware that I was like that. So I made it a point this morning to make sure that I cleared everything out. I know where that energy was coming from. And I know that that's not who I am, but we all have our days.
Sure.
So I made sure this morning to do one focus on loving kindness, and it helps. So in the quietness of your mind, I'm able to connect with my heart energy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that I listen to that I repeat to myself while I'm doing it. And it really does clear out whatever blockage is there or whatever's going on in your mind that typically, like for me, what was going on yesterday actually came from a fear of losing some business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So underneath that, when I'm aware of that my reaction to what's going on around me and how things aren't being handled correctly, and I was being a little critical of the people that work for me, and it was all that underneath it all, it comes from, fear of losing an account.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would the sky fall on me if I lost an account? No, it wouldn't. But I had to work through that this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, in the total silence of the morning, in the darkness. And so all these ideas start coming. So it clears out. It takes about 10 minutes. It clears right out.
Mm-hmm.
I feel totally different for the rest of the day. The same thing is still actually ongoing today. But as I'm dealing with it this morning at 7, 8, 9 o'clock, it doesn't feel the same as it did yesterday. And so that's what meditation does for me. It helps me to be in a where my mind and my body are connected in a way where there's peace. I'm at peace, even with the same things happening to me. They're not really happening to me. They're just happening in a different way. Yeah. So that's what it does for me. And there's other times I listen to other ones. I listen to ones that are about powerful positive thinking, and setting my tone for the day about reaching goals. Then there's other days where I think about nothing. And that's the hardest, right? Because, I do sit there and I kind of have the fingers together and I do all that, but focusing on the breath going in and out, every second of it makes it impossible for you to think about anything else. Because you can't think two thoughts at the same time. It's impossible. And being able to focus and do that, it does give me the ability during difficult times, difficult moments during the day, or anytime in general, to be able to go find that place of peace and calm anytime I want to, although it was difficult.
Because something happens to your neurons and your synapses in your brain when you slow down also. I have to tell you something very funny. My 16-year-old daughter, my kids know that I meditate. And with TM, you have a mantra. And you never share the mantra with anyone.
So what's your mantra?
I would have to kill you. Yeah. Anyway, so my daughter said to me the other day, when you have a will and you die, could you put your mantra in the will so I can know what it is? It was crazy. So funny.
It's that big of a secret. It's a mystery.
Yeah. I don't know why that is, but maybe that's what TM does to keep the allure going of the program.
It's a shame that most people probably think that it's hokey or it's a woo-woo, but for anybody that does it, and when you told me that you do it, I love that, because it's anybody that I meet and speak to that I know meditates. It's an unspoken connection, in a certain way of thinking, and it without even saying it, just knowing you do that says everything I need to know about who you are, right? And if you do it consistently, it tells me even more.
Right.
It takes a lot of discipline.
A lot.
By the way, the reason I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning started with a book I read, The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. It's one of the best books I've ever read.
Wow.
I've read it about 10 times, and it's about your heart set, your soul set, your health set, and your mindset. And when those 4 pillars are all in place, you're like impenetrable. You're able to take on anything, and you're able to be the light in any situation. So it's a great book, but that's what started me with the 5 a.m. stuff.
That's a little too early for me. Don't they have a 6:30 a.m.?
Oh, you gotta do 5 a.m. 5 a.m. So it's
I'm gonna check the book out. Yeah.
It's awesome. And you know what? When you're going through divorce and you're going through tough times, it's just one more tool that somebody that's out there has to keep their mind in the right place. And I think that's a good place for us to kind of bring it to a close. It brings us full circle.
Thank you so much.
I'm really glad that you came on. And
I'm really glad we met. We're going to keep the conversation going.
We are. In fact, I think that I have so many more questions. I think we'll do a second episode. All different questions. We'll dive in a little differently. I said at the beginning that people that listen to this, what I hope for them is that we can pay it forward. That we've got these life experiences. Your story, whilst many people would see you as a victim, you don't see yourself as a victim. And I think that's a great starting point for anybody who's taking this in. Yes, Mara had all these things happen to her, but they didn't happen to her, they happened for her. Mm-hmm. And that is something we can all take on that perspective. And what she did was, I'm talking like you're not here. What you did was you turned tragedy into triumph. And that's the message. That's what this show's about. And that's why I'm so appreciative that you came on. And when I first learned about your interest in doing this with me, I didn't know this whole story. I thought I was just going to have on somebody who's a divorce attorney who I know is really smart and can give some good advice, but I had no idea that the first part of this was your background. So when you told me that, I wasn't sure if you were going to want to share it, but I'm thankful that you did, because even if one person watches this and gets hope and their life is impacted and something comes out of this, then we passed it along and we did our job.
Yeah.
And that's what the show's about. That's what it's about.
I love what you're doing, Matt. It's great.
So before we come to a total end, I want you to tell me where people can find you, how they can find you, and also about your foundation. Anything you want people to know. I'm going to put it down below when we put this out, so they'll be able to go to these locations. Sure. Or email addresses, whatever you give us.
Yeah. So My firm is the law offices of Mara Bernstein. I'm on Military Trail in Boca, www.marabernsteindivorce.com. I could be reached at 561-212-1832. Go on my website, check me out, and I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions about divorce, prenups, postnups, life in general. Want to
You have
connect
any
with me
social
as a
media?
friend? It's all good. Hmm?
Social media? You have any social, like LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if anybody wants to find her, look her up.
You could tell that I'm not social media savvy. So yeah.
And the last thing I want you to point out is you said that you have a foundation. Is it still active?
Yeah, no, it's not active right now. But it will be again in
Okay.
time.
Well, when it is active again, I want you to share that and we'll put that out there too.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. Love that.
So we're going to end the show by saying to everybody out there, work hard, be humble, and don't give up. Always have hope. All right. Thank you again.
Thank you. It's been great.